Hey, it's Dave Rettelberger here from the Schottenstein Center and Nationwide Arena, home of the basketball tournament. And I'm joined by my good buddy, Gary, the Arena Guy. Arena Guy, how's it going?
Going great. Great to see you again. As I say every week, it's great to see you, but I haven't seen you in person since March 8th.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'll see you in person anytime soon either.
I know. So Merry Christmas.
Ringo Starr, I see. Is that the Ringo shirt you're wearing today?
Yeah, it's kind of a repeat. You know, we talked about the best drummers. I wore this shirt, but as I was going through the Arena Guy wardrobe to decide what shirt to wear today, I thought because Ringo Starr just celebrated his 80th birthday, I thought I might wear this in honor of him once again. And, you know, it's just hard to believe that Ringo Starr is 80 years old. You know, he was the Beatles. You know, one of the top 3 or 4 or 5 bands or artists that have influenced all of rock and pop music is 80 years old. So, you know, and he still seems as vibrant as ever. He still tours with his all-star band, which I saw a couple years ago. Is where I got this shirt. And always great. And he's influenced a lot of the great artists that we present at the Schott Nationwide Arena through his, obviously his drumming, but being with the Beatles and all that stuff. So an influencer for sure. And happy birthday to Ringo belatedly for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ringo, of course, you know, 80 years. I remember when Paul turned 64 and it was a big deal, right? It was like last week.
Right, exactly. And
but actually, it's funny because I remember the show Ringo did at the Schott. I believe it was in our very first year. I came as an attendee, and you know, I was dumb enough at the time that I was excited for the show, but I was just kind of like, you know, it's that thing of where every artist I love is going to live forever, right? And
well, you feel that way.
But I remember when he got into leading the crowd at the Schott into a sing-along of Yellow Submarine, it was one of those moments where all of a sudden you realized that you were in the presence of a Beatle and you were hearing Beatles music live by a Beatle. And it was just, it was a very special moment and a great show I'll never forget.
It really was. That's why when we did McCartney at Nationwide Arena the last time, I know he's played Columbus several times, but for me, it was the first time I'd ever seen Paul McCartney or a Beatle in general. And I almost wanted to cry. It just was, the hair stands up on your arms. It's an emotional experience because you're seeing something greater than great. And so when I saw McCartney, I thought, you know what? Sadly, George Harrison and John Lennon are gone. I really need to see Ringo while I can. So when I went to Las Vegas a couple years ago, I saw Ringo and his all-star band, and it was almost the same feeling. And, you know, you just saw a legend. So happy birthday, Ringo.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and not so happy news, I guess. Charlie Daniels passed away a couple days ago. And, you know, a lot of people just knew him from the Devil Went Down to Georgia, but he had a big impact on country music, had the big crossover hit, and actually probably the highlight of his career, he was on your radio show a couple times, right?
He was on, I think I tried to count the other day. I think 5 times.
Wow.
And this seems to be, I don't know, maybe I need to quit being on here with you because it seems like every week we're talking about the passing of another legend. The first time I interviewed him 5 times, and in all the various stages of my radio career. And then we presented him when I was in Illinois. He was an opening act for Alabama, of all things. But when I was in college, I worked at the lowest rated radio station in Bloomington Normal, Illinois. And all my friends wanted to work at the #1 station called WBNQ. And, but they were working overnights and they were doing all this. I worked at the lowest rated AM station that really not that many people listen to, but I got to do everything. And then I made myself music director. So I dealt with the record labels and started doing interviews and created a countdown show on Saturdays, which was a real original idea because Casey Kasem and everyone else had ever done.
But you could do that on a low-rated AM, right?
But I did it. And so what I started doing is having an artist of the week, and I would do interviews. And one of my first was with Charlie Daniels. He had no idea who I was. His management had no idea who I was. We were not an influencing radio station. We were not a reporting station or anything like that. but he did this interview. He couldn't have been kinder and greater. And so that was my first contact with him. Then I worked at the arena at the University of Illinois, and I would fill in once in a while, kind of as a novelty thing. Somebody would go on vacation on the morning show, and they'd say, hey, Gary from the Assembly Hall is here. And I would, through my own initiative, start booking some celebrity guests, and Charlie Daniels is one of them. Then I did a Saturday Barbara Walters type 3-hour interview show with a whole bunch of artists. He was on again, and then he was on a few times on my afternoon drive show. And he was always great. He loved people. He loved his fans. He loved veterans. He loved America. He had very strong opinions.
Yeah, he did.
His politics and America and the veterans and everything, but he was always constructive, kind, and compassionate about it all, which is how it should be. And it was just awesome. And you mentioned all those things, and guess what? He was a heck of a musician and an entertainer as well. Throw that in there. But he was always so humble too. You know, I would talk to him because I love connections to history. So Elvis Presley recorded one of his songs before anyone knew who Charlie Daniels was, called It Hurts Me. It was on the B-side. Kids today don't even know what B-sides are. It was on the B-side 45. They don't even know what a 45 is, of a song called Kissing Cousins. And so, excuse me, he loved that. He loved that Devil Went Down to Georgia was the record of the year. He loved that he was a member of the Grand Ole Opry. He loved that he was a member of the Country Music Association Hall of Fame. And he loved his fans and everything, but he was just so dang humble about everything. And he had started an organization for veterans when they returned home to help get them back on their feet. And that was a huge part of what he did. And he was always one of those artists, you hear about this once in a while, artists who love to help new and upcoming artists. And so he liked to do that. So a lot of the younger artists are talking about how great he was. So as I go on and on about Charlie Daniels, it's only because I was such a big fan of his. He just was a heck of a performer too, and he was one of the guys that originated the country rock sound. You know, you could throw in a whole bunch of Marshall Tucker and even Leonard Skinner and some of those.
That kind of classic rock country hybrid.
Exactly. That whole genre was very unique, probably in the early 70s, you know, when that got started. And he would have his jams, volunteer jam concerts. And he started out playing the fiddle. It's what they call it in country music. It's not the violin. With Hank Williams Jr., another country outlaw rebel. And he went from there. So Charlie Daniels, great life, great career, great music, and just a great guy. So, yeah.
Yeah, I saw him once at some little county fair.
Quite ironic, if I could just say that.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I said I saw him once live at a county fair.
Yeah. I mean, that was...
He loved playing to the people.
He really did. And I would say one last thing. It's quite ironic that he passed away 2 days after July 4th, because he was a vocal patriot and lover of America and what America stands for. So that was, the timing was interesting.
Devil Went Down to Georgia is such a classic, one of those great iconic songs that, you know, I first, you know, heard in roller skate arenas when it was a new release. But yeah. I remember a Zac Brown band playing just the most amazing live version of it at Buckeye Country Superfest a couple years ago. And boy, that song still cooks. That's just a great.
Yeah, and you know there are two versions of that, remember?
Yes, right, the clean and the not so clean version.
Yeah, and the not clean version, the unclean version, if you want to call it that, is nothing today, because
yeah, right.
That's the word. We can say it, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
I can say it. But he changed it to Son of a Gun on the clean version. So it was funny how some stations would not play it for that too. So, you know.
Yeah, just a great track.
Yeah.
Stand the test of time. Hey, boy, what a crazy week this has been. Actually having events at Nationwide Arena, the basketball tournament. 4th of July, man, I tell you, I was all excited. I was there. I had it turned on, ready to go, and then got to see some cornhole for a few minutes.
I know, you said that, and how corny is that? Not to say for that part, because here it is, TBT, the first basketball event since March, really the first major sports competition other than NASCAR and some exhibitions since March. and it's being preempted by cornhole.
Just for like the first 15 minutes.
I
And
know, but still.
but still, I was like, come on. And Twitter was blowing up. All around the world excited. It's one of the great things is I monitor all the social media for the venues and seeing people all around the world excited about basketball is back. And then just people were going nuts for that first. It was almost like Heidi. It was our Heidi moment, if you will, for I can
what
throw
a
that
reference
for big football fans. Well, the old timers who know what 45s are might get that.
Oh my God, what an obscure reference, but that was huge at the time.
Right, but it was that thing where, you know, again, and then once it kicked over, I got to tell you what, I've been watching basketball from Nationwide Arena from home, but every day, it's just great to see live sports again and to see these players who are giving it their all. You know, it's really exciting to watch.
Yeah, it's great to watch it from home as people in 197 other countries, 196 other countries are doing. It's crazy that Nationwide Arena in Columbus, Ohio is getting attention throughout the world. And it's great basketball. Like we talked about before, 120 teams applied to be a part of this, 24 made it. So we're seeing the cream of the crop, and we've seen that already. And Carmen's crew is taking on the House of Pain. So I came here from Champaign, Illinois. Most of House of Pain are former U of I players. So my friends back home are razzing me. So it's kind of like the Cubs and the Cardinals, or the Buckeyes and whomever. You know, I've got a friend who's a big Alabama fan, so we kind of razz Ohio State and
yeah, sure.
and all that. So it's kind of like that with TBT here. And what's interesting, though, is one of U of I's top players that should be playing for House of Pain, you would think, is playing for Carmen's crew. So that's kind of interesting.
It's a strange times, man. Nothing surprises me anymore. But it's so great to see live basketball and to see other celebrities and coaches coming in with interviews and their social media watching. And really, what's cool about this is the way that Columbus is setting the stage for the world in sports right now. And that, that definitely, as you're seeing, you know, the NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, everybody's taking notes right now on what's happening in Columbus.
Yep, absolutely. And another interesting thing is I was really concerned that it would be great basketball, but on TV it wouldn't look that great because no fans. And man, it looks fantastic. Just like in the shot behind you with the banners and everything, it surrounds the floor so well. It looks great on TV, and it doesn't look empty.
Yeah, no, I got to tell you, I was surprised and impressed when I saw it, because I felt, oh, wow, it looks good, right? And having the big giant tournament bracket there at center court, it's great. I do miss the crowd noise a little bit. It reminds me,
of course.
My son said it reminds him of of playing basketball in middle school when there'd be 5 people in the stands, and all you really heard was the sound of the court and the people on the bench. But in some ways, that's kind of cool too. And real quick, I get caught up in the action and don't miss that at all. So it's been great to work, and many more games to come.
Many more through the 14th of July, and you know, again, for anyone wondering, incredible safety precautions in place. And even with ESPN, one of my favorite trivia things, and I shared it before, is that there are 5 cameras. 2 are run manually and 3 are run remotely. And even the play-by-play guys, we'd love to host them in Columbus, but they're in Indianapolis. So
it's so strange, right?
It's so strange. So this event is taking on this 5-on-5 tournament, winner take all, $1 million, and so much of it Indianapolis, you know, remote camera operations, but strict security measures. And it's like you said, all other major league sports are watching this to see how it comes off, and it's likely to be duplicated.
It's a great time for Columbus and for the arena. We're having a lot of fun with it. All right, so our main topic for the day is, sometimes we like to have a little feature topic. We kind of teased this last week a little bit. Music biopics, right? Yeah. So this is a type of movie where it's a nonfiction kind of movie. So sometimes they have elements of fiction in. But I thought, you know what, we just look at some of the projects coming up. I'd love to get your thoughts on some of these as we talk through them, because you know, the big preview came out last week for the new Aretha Franklin movie.
Yeah.
It's Jennifer Hudson playing Aretha Franklin, and it's called Respect, of course, right? So
Right.
you have a chance to see that preview?
I did, and you know what? The preview looks great. What gives it a little bit of credibility for me is that Jennifer Hudson has got a powerful voice, as did the Queen of Soul, and Aretha Franklin handpicked Jennifer Hudson. So Aretha Franklin was aware of this movie being made, and she wanted Jennifer Hudson to play her. And sadly, she will not be able to see the end result, but it looks fantastic. And, you know, Jennifer Hudson won the Oscar, the only American Idol contestant to win the Oscar. In fact, the only fourth place American Idol contestant to ever win an Oscar. She didn't even win American Idol, which is shocking. But she was in Dreamgirls, and it just, she's going to be great. At least that's what's expected.
Yeah, you know, there's no doubt that she can sing the songs, right? I mean, Jennifer Hudson can sing, and she can act too. She's a great actress. That's the hardest part with these biopics, is finding somebody who can capture the soul of the performer. Performers are, I think it's one of the toughest acting jobs that is out there, to really try to capture, you know, somebody who's already known for being so charismatic and so well known for their performance and singing styles. And it's a rare actor who can pull off both sides of that.
Totally agree, because, you know, you don't want like a Saturday Night Live impersonation, a caricature. You, at the same time, you know, it's a real mistake to find somebody that is trying to be a carbon copy. Right. Perfect example, you know, I'm going to refer to it, but Rocket Man.
There it is.
I know, it was inevitable, but Taron Egerton was not trying to be, he picked up some quirks, which is great. You want that for credibility, but you don't want to do that, because then it becomes distracting if they're off. And he even used his own voice instead of trying to sound like the artist. And so Jennifer Hudson is doing that with Aretha. She is not, she might do some of the inflections and some of that, but not trying to copy exactly or imitate. You know, in some of these biopics, they lip sync to the originals, and some they don't. And so, but I think the best ones are where they try to capture the essence of the artist and the career, and that works best.
You have a Doors book I see up there on the bookshelf. Makes me think of Val Kilmer, right, in his Oliver Stone's The Doors.
Do you think that was by chance? That was. I usually try to do something in the background related to what we were talking about. And yeah, The Doors and Val Kilmer, I feel like he's one of the best biopics there. And it's just simply called The Doors. And he did a great job. And that actually brought us back to an era that we didn't directly live through. So we were kind of experiencing it for the first time, whereas some of the newer ones, we lived through the era, so we could say, well, that didn't really happen, did it?
Yeah.
But that was really one of the better ones.
You know, we didn't prepare a list or anything this time, but a couple other ones that stand out to me. Oh, you did, of course. All right.
It's not in order. Just a few notes. I was watching TV last night.
Jamie Foxx as Ray Charles was great. I think the movie was called just Ray, right?
Right. And he won the Oscar for that.
And Joaquin Phoenix as Johnny Cash, right? And Walk the Line, I thought was another just amazing performance.
I think he won the Oscar for that. Maybe he did. He was nominated for that.
Reese did. I think Reese won for playing June. So
June, yeah. And I think Joaquin was nominated. But both of those were awesome. And I think Ray with Jamie Foxx was the first time that we, at least as the masses, realized that Jamie Foxx could actually sing. I mean, he's got an incredible voice. He was actually on 2 albums ago with Barbra Streisand, sang a duet with her, legitimately, not as a joke, like a real song. So it's kind of interesting how that worked. And Jamie Foxx won the Oscar for capturing the essence of Ray Charles. And Walk the Line is one of my favorite movies as well.
And a great soundtrack too, by the way. I love Joaquin and Reese. I actually really like their performances of the music, and I've listened to that more than a few times. So
Yeah, absolutely.
all right, what else is on your list? Before we get into the upcoming projects that I want your opinions on, what else is on your list?
Okay, I just wrote down last night when I was watching TV. I didn't even look any of these up because these are my favorite genres of music. If there's a biopic of a musician or musicians, I will go see it. And so I like everything from I Saw the Light, which was about Hank Williams, to What's Love Got to Do with It. Tina Turner was one of the
Angela
best.
Bassett, right? I forgot about that one.
She was phenomenal with the capital F. She was amazing. I loved, and this wasn't a theatrical biopic, but it was a miniseries on TV on the Temptations. Was really good. The Doors, Rocket Man. Of course, we've talked about Bohemian Rhapsody on our Arena Guy audio podcast, and some of these have flaws, so we don't need to get into those again. But Bohemian Rhapsody was a great movie for sure. And what else I have? Ray, Walk the Line, Buddy Holly's story.
Yeah, okay, for sure.
Because it took you back to a different era, and La Bamba, same thing, same era. And Love and Mercy covered the kind of the eccentric life of Brian Wilson, if you want to call it that, his trials and tribulations. That was a good one. And just for like getting down to the kind of the early days of country music, Spacek in Coal Miner's Daughter is really good because there's a whole different era where and she won the Oscar for that too. So a lot of these actors and actresses are winning Oscars for portrayals in these biopics. Brings you back to the day where they would get into an old beat up car and drive from station to station, radio station, to try to get their 45s on the radio. And it was just a fascinating process, which is absolutely not how it works today. So those are some of my favorites.
That was a great choice. I have one quick biopic, a funny story. So I grew up in a very small town, 8,000 people. And back in the day, there was one movie theater in town, and that movie theater showed one movie. And they played that one movie for a week, and then the next week you got another movie. And that was it. And, when you were a young teenager, I didn't have a car. I couldn't drive to the big city and see, go to a multiplex or anything. So, and this was in the days before the internet. So if you didn't, the only way you knew what a movie was maybe was by watching Siskel and Ebert. If you got a preview, occasionally they'd put a movie up and a title would be up, and that's all you'd know was the title of the movie. There was no way to find out what the movie was about. Right now, you could talk to your parents, but I wasn't going to do that, right? And so one week, I remember my friends and I were so excited because there was a movie that was coming out called Crazy. And we're like, what's Crazy? So we actually bought a ticket. I was probably 12 years old, 12, 13. We go in, and we're like, oh, let's see what this crazy movie is. And about 10 minutes in, we realized it was
What?
a bio. Of course, it was a music biopic of the one and only Patsy Cline, right? So.
Oh yeah. I saw that was excellent too.
Yeah, and it was one of those.
Not what a 12-year-old wanted to see, probably.
We all walked out. Walked out. Yeah. It's not the crazy we were looking for.
Right. That's funny. That was a good movie, but not for a 12-year-old, probably.
No. But
I forgot one.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but
no, go ahead.
One that was produced, 3, 4, 5 years ago, produced by Mick Jagger, who dabbles in film once in a while as a producer. And it's called Get On Up. Got horrible reviews. People hated it. But I don't know. I liked it. It was about James Brown.
Yeah.
And it didn't do very well at the box office. It was considered a flop, both critically and financially. But
I liked it a lot too. Actually, I thought it was. I didn't catch it in theaters, and but I actually thought I did enjoy it. It's again, I think the challenge is playing James Brown. James Brown was. Well, like so many of these movies, that's the challenge.
Yeah, because which is the challenge in so many, like you say, because why do a biopic on somebody who just stands in front of a microphone? So you want the people with a lot of energy, a lot of who are pretty eccentric, who've got a great story, maybe ups and downs, and so a lot of these people are like that. So it is kind of hard to portray living people, especially ones that we know and have maybe seen.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked about this before too, but one of my favorite things, regardless of the performances, is I just loved when I go into a theater, remember theaters? And hear the music, right? So when you can go in and see one of these movies and just be surrounded by that great sound system, it's almost like a concert experience, right? Where you can hear these songs. With Bohemian Rhapsody, that was half the joy, was just hearing those Queen songs you've heard 1,000 times through your earbuds or on a desk in a corner of your office, but to hear it blared again through giant speakers. Boy, that's going to the theater and seeing that is the next best thing to seeing it live in concert.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Well, let me run down, because with Rocket Man and Bohemian Rhapsody both doing so well, there's a lot of, as we know, Hollywood loves a trend, right? And there's a lot of movies that are potentially in the works. We've already talked about Bohemian Rhapsody 2 and the long shot that is, but some interesting stuff, and I just wanted to get your take on some of this stuff. There's one called Going Electric is the working title. It's a Bob Dylan.
Oh yeah.
And it's about his phase where he is going electric, where he went electric, of course, and the controversy there. Directed by James Mangold, who's the guy who did Walk the Line. So Bob Dylan's done it. There's been a few kind of Bob Dylan movies over the years that have been, interesting.
Yeah, well, yeah. There's one in particular where it involved people played him with various genders and races and all that kind of stuff, but he tried to remain true to the story. Oddly enough, just a little tangent, which I'm famous for. One of the most famous unfinished, unreleased Elton John songs is a song called When Dylan Went Electric. And it's always brought up as one of the few songs that he would write a song. If he doesn't get something down within 5 or 10 minutes, he would toss the lyric and move on. He's kept this one over the years and apparently works on it once in a while. But that would be interesting. Dylan is certainly worthy of a biopic, a good one.
Yeah, he's such an enigmatic guy. And you remember that show, you and I stood together at Mershon Auditorium. Wasn't that long ago? Was it late last year or early this year?
Yeah, I think it was last year, yeah.
And saw Bob play. And still, he's his own dude, right? He's his own guy. But I think that's part of what makes him a great potential for a movie.
So much charisma. He only did like 2 or 3 of his hits that whole concert. And nobody cared because he's Bob Dylan.
He's a legend.
Charisma, all that stuff, even though charisma is maybe not the first word that you think of, but he's got it. And he was great. So I would go see that. I would go on opening weekend. Yeah.
Michael Jackson, there's always talk about Michael Jackson. I know there have been a couple of TV movies, but I think Paramount is working on this one. This is interesting to me. They say it's not going to be a sanitized version, but they're working with the Jackson family estate and have secured the rights for the music.
Well, I don't know. I feel like the Jackson family, the estate at this point in time, is a little bit about the money. So they might be able to give in a little bit on what maybe they wouldn't have before, but they're very adamant about Michael Jackson being innocent of a lot of the accusations that have popped up over the years. So I'd be curious to see that. There's a terrific miniseries called American Dream.
Yes, right. The Jacksons, right?
About the Jacksons, yeah, which is great. I'd be curious to see this one. I think this is one that you'd have to be really careful with because Michael Jackson was so iconic and there was nobody that even came close to him in any way with his dancing, with his performing, with his look, everything. And this is one where if they're not careful, they could get into like trying to imitate too much and it might be totally distracting.
I don't envy the actor who takes on that role because there's no way to win on that one.
I mean, the way he talked, the way everything, I feel like this one would be really tough. If I were a director, I'm not so sure I would tackle that one.
Yeah, agreed.
It's either going to be a huge hit or it's going to be a flop. I don't know if there's much middle ground on that one.
Yeah. Now, the same producer is also just acquired the life story for the Bee Gees. And looking at, with Paramount, a Bee Gees movie. I don't know. I'm not very familiar with their backstory. Is there enough brotherly drama there to make a good movie?
There's a lot of brotherly drama there. Of course, there were four Gibbs brothers, the brothers Gibb, and Andy Gibb started performing after, he was the youngest, after the Bee Gees were up and running, and the Bee Gees actually wrote a lot of his hits. So, you know, I Just Want to Be Your Everything, and Love Is Thicker Than Water. His brothers sang on that. So he was like the fourth Bee Gee, literally, because while he didn't sing on Bee Gee records, the Bee Gees, you know, his brothers sang on his. Barry Gibb has talked a lot about how he and Morris, and then he and Robin did not get along that well. And one of his regrets is that he didn't make up before, I forgot which one, I think it was Morris maybe, before he passed away. He's very emotional about it. So there's a little bit of drama there. There's the typical rock star stuff about excesses
Sure.
and all that, and a story where they kind of didn't come from much and became, you know, one of the biggest pop groups in the world. And of course, they were right there and helped elevate disco through Saturday Night Fever, which they actually did before Saturday Night Fever, like Nights on Broadway and Jive Talking to some of that, which came before. But Saturday Night Fever really just was the cannonball that thrusted disco into, and there was at one point they had all top 5 songs on the Billboard charts, and like 8 of the 10, and some were Bee Gees. One was Yvonne Elliman. There were Frankie Valli, Grease, and so all this stuff that they started writing for others. And then Barry Gibb produced albums for Dionne Warwick and Barbra Streisand and Kenny Rogers. You know, Islands in the Stream they wrote. So there's a lot there. I'd be curious what angle they take, and I'm guessing it would be from the early beginnings, probably through disco. Probably they can't leave out Saturday Night Fever.
Yeah, it was a brief run, if you will, but boy, did they shine bright during that run.
Oh man, yeah. And then the album that came after Saturday Night Fever, they're under a lot of pressure, and Too Much Heaven. Remember that?
Oh yeah.
Well, I'm not sure it was the #1 record, but riding off the momentum of Saturday Night Fever, Spirits Having Flown is the album. So be a good story there, depending on the angle that they take. Listen to me rattle off all these weird facts that pop in my head.
The closest I ever came to seeing the Bee Gees was the one performance of Saturday Night Live I got to see. Justin Timberlake and Jimmy Fallon did the Barry Gibb talk show. So that
yeah. Well, that's
I'd watch a movie with those guys doing the Bee Gees. I think that would be entertaining.
Oh, for sure. Never saw the Bee Gees. I'm not sure when I was in the business that they toured that much.
No, I don't think so.
So yeah, I never did see them. I wish I had. I got their live album. It's really good.
Well, I think they would actually be primed for a comeback with a well-made movie. So that could be a winner there.
Barry Gibb, if he gets behind it, because he's the last surviving of the brothers. If he got behind it, that might add some credibility.
Kind of how it almost, I don't want to say brought Queen to a new level of popularity, but boy, did it energize the entire music catalog for Queen with Bohemian Rhapsody. You could do the same kind of thing for the Bee Gees.
It did. And the fact that Queen, the surviving members of Queen, were behind it, again, credibility is a big factor here. Like Aretha Franklin choosing Jennifer Hudson, Queen with Bohemian Rhapsody, Elton John involved with Rocket Man, all that stuff. It really gives it an extra sense of credibility, which I think is kind of important to some of these.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a new David Bowie movie that's pretty close to coming out called Stardust. This features kind of an unknown in the role of Bowie, and it's kind of the story of his first U.S. tour. But the interesting thing is, it's one of those ones where the family did not approve it, and they don't have rights. They don't have rights to any of the music. It's always a struggle, right?
You don't have any rights to the music. How are they going to do that?
No, they've managed it with a couple of Beatles movies over the years, where they have just found enough other songs the Beatles covered that they were able to work into the music, or just kind of work around it. But if you're doing a movie about the first U.S. tour and you can't really have Bowie doing Bowie, that's a tough sell.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Elvis, Elvis has been feature of many movies, but Baz Luhrmann, who did Moulin Rouge and so much stuff, very creative musical director, is the guy behind the new Elvis movie, the one that Tom Hanks is rumored to play Colonel Tom Parker. They've been talking about this for years.
Yes, in fact, when Tom Hanks and his wife were diagnosed with the coronavirus, they were in Australia filming this movie, and Tom Hanks is playing Colonel Parker, which I think the story is a little more based on Colonel Parker than Elvis. Of course, the two go together, but there's a big angle on Colonel Parker. There's a lot of angles of this. In my opinion, being a big Elvis fan, and I know you are too, Colonel Parker was probably the best thing that happened for Elvis in the early part of his career, and then probably the worst thing that happened for Elvis later on, because after the first couple of movies, they all became the same. He wanted to do A Star Is Born with Barbra Streisand, which would have been really, really interesting. But Colonel Parker wanted too much money and wanted to take too much control, and he and Barbra Streisand, can you imagine them butting heads? And Elvis never performed out of the country. The furthest he got was Hawaii, and the thinking is that it's because Colonel Parker had committed a crime in another country, and a serious one, and that he could have been deported, that he wasn't, all this stuff. So there's a lot of angles to this that could make it very interesting. And of course, you throw Tom Hanks in the mix.
Can't go wrong.
More interesting, yeah.
Yeah, even a bad Tom Hanks movie is usually better than most other stuff.
That's true.
Let's see. Last couple, Amy Winehouse. Talk about Amy Winehouse movie, which I think, definitely her family's on board with it. I think she's got a story to tell there. And then Boy George. There's talk of a Boy George movie, and he talks about having an actress named Sophie Turner. She's famous from Game of Thrones. She's also been in the X-Men movies. He says she kind of has a resemblance to him. It's been pointed out online that she kind of looks like him. She's married to one of the Jonas Brothers. But she said she's in. She said, absolutely, I'm down. I'm willing to play Boy George in the Boy George movie, which I think would be an interesting and probably appropriate twist in kind of his unusual career.
Yeah, well, that would be interesting. I haven't heard about that one. Certainly, there's enough in Boy George's life and career that would make it interesting.
Yeah, for sure, right? And a lot of these follow the same formula of the troubled childhood, the allure of becoming a star, to the drug abuse, to the escape from that, right? That they all kind of follow that pattern. But I enjoy it every time, right? It's my version of a Hallmark movie.
I know. I suppose if somebody lived a squeaky clean life, it doesn't add a lot of drama.
Yeah, it would not be. It might not make for a great movie. So many,
Right.
Real quick before I let you go, and I know we're running long here today already, but just real life biopics. This one is a fictionalized version of. Just last week I watched Cameron Crowe's Almost Famous.
Oh yeah, great movie.
And it's celebrating its 20th anniversary right now, believe it or not. And they're doing a 5-part podcast reuniting the cast, which I think is pretty cool. And it's just, if you are a music fan, I was just reminded how much I love that movie. And it's not a biopic of Cameron Crowe, but it's kind of a fictionalized retelling of what his life was like in the early 70s growing up around music, and just one of my all-time favorite movies that I just watched last week and had to mention.
Yeah, writing for Rolling Stone and all that kind of stuff. So great movie, some great music in that, of course, naturally. And no, I love that movie too.
Anything else biopic-wise we didn't touch on that you wanted to hit? Anything you'd like to see? Is there a biopic about an artist that you would like to see that you think would be a good subject?
Well, that's a good question. I think a lot of my favorites have been covered. Even like the Beatles, there have been TV shows and movies, and not really biopics, but close to it kind of stuff that's been good. We kind of know everything we know about them. It's going to be interesting with this Aretha Franklin movie if we learn more things about her. There's a lot of things in her past with her father being a reverend, and her and the civil rights movement, and then her music, and Respect was her biggest hit, but it was recorded after Otis Redding, who wrote it. It went #1. He never saw it go #1 because he died before that. There might be a lot of drama in that movie. I might have to give you an answer next time, because
so there's a tease for next episode.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you though, here, different from a different angle, I don't want a biopic about Prince. I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't need it. He liked being he didn't like his private business out there for the world. Other than, I mean, he liked some of his private business out for the world, but he didn't like that behind the scenes drama, his stuff. He was private about that. And I don't think that any artist really could capture him. Maybe Bruno Mars, right? But it's still, it's a tough role. And I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, and you're a mega fan. And same way, when they first announced that Rocket Man, being a diehard Elton fan is it's no secret. I was almost like, I don't know. It's it's not going to work. I just didn't know, and it turned out to be brilliant in my mind. But
it was a good Rocket Man's great.
But yeah, I was very cautious about it too. So yeah, when I start dealing with our favorites, sometimes.
And then you see what Rami Malek did with Freddie.
Well, there you go.
You got to go, okay, well, if you get the right person in the role, anything's possible.
Then he proved that for sure.
Well, great talking movies and music with you again. Hopefully someday we're talking about real music for real people.
Yes, for sure.
Looking forward to that. Arena Guy, where can people find you on social?
Facebook, under The Arena Guy, Instagram, Twitter, @_The Arena Guy. You can still listen to some of our previous podcasts on YouTube, The Arena Guy, and wherever you get your podcasts. So one day we'll be doing audio again. This is fun also, so you can talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And concert news, we're working on stuff. We're working on stuff. I'll tell you that.
We are.
We have some potential on sales coming up. So fingers crossed.
I know. Looking forward to that.
I hate saying that out loud, but I'm going to say it. So keep your eye on the Schottensteincenter.com, nationwidearena.com. You'll find links to all our social there as well. Arena Guy, always a pleasure, and look forward to talking to you next week.
All right. We'll see you next week.